One, Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Chairman, before we begin and get going in earnest, I'd like to make a motion to move agenda item number 24 to 22 and to delete agenda item 23.
So it's a motion to move item 24, make that item number 22, and then 22 will become 23, and elimination of 24. Elimination of 23.
Yes.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Notice. All in favor? We'll make that change on the agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 3, rules of order. We follow Robert's Rules of Order and any other rules that are adopted at the annual organizational meeting. Item 4, adoption of the Ellsworth City Council minutes from the following meetings: April 19th, 2021 regular meeting, which was tabled at the May 17th, 2021 regular council meeting, and May 17, 2021 regular meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. I should note for the record that all councilors are present. Item 5, city manager's report.
Thank you, and good evening to everyone. I have a couple of things, announcements. First of all, Friends in Action is planning a dedication for the senior playground tomorrow, June 22nd at noontime at the Knowlton Park, for any of those who are interested and able to attend. Ellsworth Historical Preservation Commission Museum in the Streets unveiling ceremony will be taking place on Wednesday, July 14th at 5:30 p.m. in the Knowlton Park. And you may have noticed some of those all throughout the downtown area. And Water Street project, for those of you who have been on Water Street today, you know that we've begun some much needed pavement and work to a section of Water Street, and that will continue and is planned to be done Wednesday, June 30th, weather permitting, between the hours of 6 a.m. and 3 p.m. That's when the paving will be done. And last but not least, we're scheduling a workshop on July 15th, the council workshop at 6 p.m. for further discussion regarding floating structures on Green Lake and other lakes.
And that's a follow-up as a request from, I missed the April meeting, but I understand that council had asked for that.
Yeah, correct. The council at the time asked for staff to do further research and report back, so that will be an opportunity for the staff to report back on what they've found, and also opportunity for citizens alike to come and provide some information to the council. That's all I have.
Any questions? Just to also just note, for workshops, just a reminder to the public, workshops are a time to gather information, have discussions. No actions or votes are taken during workshops, so that workshop will be informational and in nature, and if there's any action to take out of that, that will be put on a subsequent council agenda. Item 6, committee reports. Any councilors attend any committees? Councilor Grindle.
I attended the broadband committee. It's our first meeting, and Jason provided us with some background on the existing broadband service in Ellsworth, and we just chatted a lot about where we would like to go and our expansion possibly expansion of broadband to all of our citizens, to businesses, and we'll be meeting again shortly.
Any other committees? Council Phillips?
Went to the Harbor Commission meeting. Things are moving along well, and there was nothing of any earth-shattering substance. Gas is starting to flow, boats are starting to come in, people are happy, life is good down there.
And the Recreation Commission did not meet, the meeting was canceled, but I do know that committee is looking for new members. So if there's anybody interested in joining that committee, now would be an excellent time to sign up. Any other committees? All right. Item 7, citizens' comments. This is a portion of the agenda where citizens can make comments on any matter they wish. If there's an agenda item, you'll have an opportunity to speak at that time. But if you have a item that you want to talk about? And seeing none, we'll move to item 8, presentation of awards, and we do not have any awards this evening. So we will move to item 9. Council Order Number 042108, discussion and action on supporting the bike pedestrian path extension project with local support through a future funding source, sponsored by Council Blanchett. This was tabled at the April 19th, 2021 and May 17, 2021 regular council meetings.
Hi, councilors. Jana Richards, Economic Development Director. Here to finally provide some background information that was in your packet. I realize the agenda item's been tabled a few times, and there's been some recent discussions about the Trail Connection project in the past few months. But I wanted to just provide some background information on the project, again, just to refresh everyone's memories and for the public that could be watching. And to just kind of summarize its importance and significance to our community if we decide to move ahead with the project. So really, this serves more as a sidewalk infrastructure project than it actually does a recreational trail project, in that it fulfills this essential need of our community to walk and bike from their neighborhood to their everyday activities, such as going to school or the grocery store. And, you know, our residents are already doing this. We see them on busy roads where, you know, there are no sidewalks currently, or there's narrow shoulders, or, you know, and we see people biking in areas where we have no bike lanes in our urban core. So this would serve to provide a safe means of bike or pedestrian travel to those people that are currently doing that. Also, from just an economic development standpoint, I'm wearing my economic development hat. It also helps Ellsworth stand out against our competitive surrounding communities. Many of them have signature walkways that they utilize to attract people to come to their communities and retain their current residents. And there's also the added bonus that businesses that are situated along or in close proximity to the walkway can benefit greatly from those trails and walkways. So that's just a bit of background information. I just wanted to re-summarize that and then just go into details. As you know, we partnered back in the winter of 2019 with the Maine DOT to conduct a feasibility study for this connector trail, and the council back in I think it was actually early January 2020, approved the 50% match that was needed to help fund that study. We held a workshop with you in February of 2021 to discuss the findings of that study. And so we're at the point now where if we want to advance the project, the largest source of funding that is available to us is through the Maine DOT Bike PED funding program, which offers grants up to $400,000. So you'll see in the packet and in the memo that we are proposing a full ask of the $400,000 from the Maine DOT, and we're asking for a local match for that of $100,000. This would allow us to conduct Phase 1 full engineering. So Phase 1 is Birch Avenue to Main Street. Phase 2 is Main Street to the Sunrise Trail. So the $500,000 budget would give us full engineering of Phase 1, construction of Phase 1 to Main Street, and then preliminary engineering of Phase 2, which would then set this project up to be shovel-ready so that we could ask for additional funding in the future to construct Phase 2. So we're here tonight before the council to request, so there's two pieces of criteria that are necessary to fulfill applying for this fund. The first is that the city certifies that it has secured the required matching funds for the project. So we are proposing that the matching funds, the $100,000, come out of the fiscal year 2022 budgeted TIF and local roads funds. So out of the TIF funds, trails are an eligible expense that can be funded through TIF dollars, and there is money in that budget to be able to be utilized as the match. Local roads funds are being proposed because the trail would essentially close Spring Street to traffic and turn it into a walkway or a trail. And it would therefore take away, well, it would basically save the money that we would need to utilize to bring Spring Street up to city standards. So the cost of doing that would be significantly more than the match for this project. So that's the first piece of criteria. The second piece of criteria is that the city commit to maintaining the trail for the next 20 years. You'll see in the memo that I provided that we, Lisa and myself, came up with a sample budget of what a maintenance plan would entail and the associated costs with that. So just to reiterate two important notes there. So some of the expenses that we outlined in that sample budget are one-time expenses and some are annual expenses. And also, we don't need to budget for the trail maintenance out of this year's coming budget, fiscal year 2022. We just need to commit to it to be able to apply, and then we can have a further discussion on it for either fiscal year 2023 or 2024, depending on when this trail is going to actually be constructed. We anticipate that this fiscal year would be mostly engineering and design of the actual project. So in summary, our request tonight is that the council please consider authorizing the local match necessary to apply for the DOT funding, and also that the council consider committing to the trail maintenance plan. Thank you.
Questions?
Any questions?
Councilor Phillips?
So, yes, I read through the proposal. No problem with the walking trail. What I do have issues with is the 20-year commitment to take care of that and plow, as we don't plow the existing trail. And if we take the budget you've given us, that's a fairly expensive item. I almost think, looking at that, we'd be better off to pay for the whole thing, and bond if we need, pay the $500,000, build our own trail, and don't take the free money that obligates us to 20 years of aggravation to keep that trail open. I think in the long-term life cycle of it, there's considerable savings for the city, and then in the end also not adding more work to the highway department in the wintertime when they're already right to the max.
I just wanted, Lisa's here in case there's any questions, but.
No, it's money. It's dollars and cents. 20 years is a long time to commit to take care of that.
Councilor Kaplan?
So I was looking at the DOT bike ped plan, and basically it's funded through the federal government's Bike Ped America plan. And the ultimate motive on their website is to get folks out of their cars and onto green transport, equitable transport, et cetera, et cetera. The problem I have is that this money is specifically tied to the roads, either closing roads or taking money from roads, which we have our roads are bad enough as it is. And if we take the first year $100,000 out of the roads budget And then each year, we're gonna be taking at least 68,000 just for the winter maintenance, which is required according to this for the next 20 years. You're looking at anywhere from 8 to 10% of the road's labor budget for a walkable path, when we have millions of people coming through these roads every year to get to the national park. I don't mind having a walkable path. I think it's a nice idea, but the idea that these grants always come with strings attached, and it's gonna ultimately be costing the taxpayer more money than if we just did it ourselves.
So I just wanted to clarify, it would be 50,000 one time out of the local roads, because the other 50 would come out of TIF funds. And then it would be 55,200 in this sample budget from the highway department budget.
But did you calculate in the added union costs, such as the cafeteria plan, health insurance, and
Yes,
things
that's,
along those
that
lines?
Yes.
that is including the total amount includes salary and benefits.
But we also know that there's an automatic 3%, 3 to 5% increase built into the union contracts anyway, so that's not gonna stay that price.
Right, that would be hypothetically the first year's cost, yes.
So
Okay.
as far as the money out of local roads, one thing to keep in mind is whether we do this path and we spend $50,000 out of local roads, or we decide that we're not gonna do the path, at some point, something has to be done with Spring Street, whether we make it a path or we keep it a road. If we keep it a road, the cost to get the road back up to what I would call decent standards would cost probably triple what we're asking out of local roads right now on a good day. So either which way, that section of road / path will need money in the next year or two.
So for shovel-ready, which would make us eligible for some other funding that wouldn't necessarily come with those strings, some would, but some is available without it. There are two things that would need to be done. One is that we need to clear up the, having the, what's the correct term? Where we're crossing over the land.
Right away?
Right away, thank you. The right-of-way access and then the engineering.
Yeah.
And if
So-
we did those two things, then the project becomes shovel-ready, correct?
Right, so,
So preliminary engineering is not, preliminary engineering is just as preliminary. So we ended out of the trail feasibility study with 4 potential options for phase 2. Preliminary design will get us to a point where we have picked one of those scenarios, we've done alignments, we've decided which right-of-ways we need to purchase or easements we need to get, and has the basic geometrics and allows for a cost estimate, essentially, for that particular route we decide to take. It doesn't have the fine details. It doesn't have, this catch basin at this exact location. It makes it closer to shovel ready than we are right now, but it's not, I can put it out to bid tomorrow, but it's a lot closer.
right,
And if you say to somebody, I have preliminary engineering, that essentially means you're on that cusp.
yeah, because the cost estimates, if we were to apply for some funding, is we would have to provide a budget. And if we don't know which alternative we're seeking for phase 2, then we don't have any idea what the associated costs would be. So by going forward with the preliminary engineering, as Lisa said, we would have that alternative and we would have at least some of the cost estimates to be able to be applied for more funding.
Councilor Capel?
My concern is that the winter requirement requires you to be ADA compliant. And now ADA compliant is not just wheelchairs, but it's also older folks, people that may have more mobility issues, but they're on foot. And if we even have ice there that they could slip on, elderly people, they fracture a hip, it's just the amount of salt and sand that's going to be required to keep that in a fashion that would protect a more feeble population is alarming. And, you know, there's waterways that pass underneath there and environmental issues with
So one
the
of the
amount of
things
salt.
to also keep in mind, right, is talking economic as well as just safety of pedestrians in general. This is really going to be something that connects Main Street to the schools and residential areas, as well as eventually, hopefully, High Street, right? So, you know, everybody talks about wanting a sidewalk on Oak Street. Well, we can't do a sidewalk on Oak Street at this point in time, just because we're waiting to DOT and for other reasons on Oak Street. But, so this would serve the same purpose. Instead of along Oak Street, you go up one or two streets and you can still access from the schools to downtown. So this really will serve as a sidewalk more than a trail. And so yes, it will require maintenance in writing, as well as my state of mind is going to say that yes, I would want it maintained as a sidewalk. Essentially, what we do to our sidewalks, we would do to this path, essentially, to keep it accessible as required in the 20-year maintenance agreement and for the safety of our citizens.
Are there sidewalks from Oak Street to this path?
Davis Street, yes. Not Davis Street.
Main Street also has one.
Is it? Right.
Councilor Blanchett?
I just want to,
Davis Street?
the local roads money, just to clear up a statement that Councilor Kaplan made, is not just for roads. Local roads money is roads, sidewalks, bike lanes, other forms of transportation. So to say that it's just for roads is a misnomer. In my mind, the funding source, the funding name, the Local Roads Committee, really should be called the Local Transportation Committee. As far as ADA access, I believe the rules stipulate that to take reasonable care to keep it clear. It would be no clearer than what we do our sidewalks. Winter weather being what it is, yeah, there's going to be ice on it, there's going to be snow on it sometimes. Sometimes it's going to be 2 or 3 days, depending on how much staff we have and/or equipment breakdowns. I have talked with Senator Susan Collins' office, and I have talked with the Maine DOT at length about this. They're in, to say disagreement with each other is not an understatement. Senator Collins' office is very surprised that it stipulates that we keep it clear in the wintertime, as was I. They indicated that a better approach might be to clear half of it if possible, so that the path could be used 4 seasons, you know, for those people that want to go cross-country skiing, for instance, to do that in a safe manner, away from traffic, rather than have a 10-foot paved path clear. So it may not, you know, depending on the winter weather, be ADA compliant, but there is an out in the agreement as long as we make reasonable attempt to do that.
And- Are you done?
Yeah.
Councilor Lyons?
When you said like you can also use it as a sidewalk to get from point A to point B by walking up there, you could also walk down State Street, and there's already a sidewalk there that's plowed and sanded to get from point A to point B much easier than walking up.
The issue, though, is that you're on that side of High Street. So High Street tends to be the
Or
one
Oak
that,
Street,
tends to be the street that is difficult to cross, right, for most people. So I used to live on Beals Avenue. I would watch people from up outer Main Street and the neighborhoods up near Parcher Street in that area by the hospital, come down Beals Avenue and then attempt to cross over where Beals Avenue then crosses over to where the Irving is. And it was pretty scary. So you're able to keep going down, right? And the idea behind this is that we could then try to fix the light at Merrill's Crossing to be able to get over to the Ellsworth Shopping Center. So the idea is, this is a smaller piece in a bigger picture for Ellsworth to try to include connectivity to allow for people to get over High Street, which seems to be one of the most difficult areas for people to traverse to go then do their business every day. And then you've got a bunch of new housing that's showing up on that side where Washington Street, Foster Street, that area, to be able to get people to then walk to school would be, would be great.
You see, by using that sidewalk system, it's gonna be safer because there are crosswalks already in place. If
But-
they're gonna walk from, say, Oriole Way to the high school, walk down State Street, walk up, go down State Street, and then up to the high school. And use a crosswalk.
So, one of the questions I have is, I'm having a hard time understanding the math behind the annual maintenance. We're talking, what is the total distance for if the path were completely, the entire length of it, if it were completely finished?
So for the section that we're looking at is only 3/4 of a mile,
Okay.
but the entire path itself would be almost 3 miles. And then, so basically you have to go up and back if you're going to be plowing it. So it's between 5 and 6 miles.
Okay. So, 5 or 6 miles, this looks like a full-time
So
employee.
yes,
So
so it is a
I-
full-time employee.
So, I think that's absurd, to have a full-time employee to be responsible for keeping in the winter, 5, 6 storms, 10 storms. I mean, that does not seem realistic.
So when a truck breaks down, our mechanic goes to the garage, works on the truck, and the sidewalks don't get dealt with for 12 hours a day, depending upon when we can get somebody back in the sidewalk machine. So ultimately, this full-time employee would be somebody who would be a full-time sidewalk/path employee, which would allow us to better maintain and keep up with our current sidewalk system as well as this additional 6 miles. Right now, the sidewalk machine has the longest route by a significant amount compared to the plow trucks. He does over 30-some miles every storm of sidewalks. So to add another 6 miles is fairly significant. So that would be the idea, is this would be the catalyst to move us into potentially another full-time position that would be dedicated to pedestrian.
Council Blanchard.
All of a sudden, we're up to 6 miles. This is a 4/10 of a mile section that we're talking, from Birch Avenue to Main Street. The section previously built by the state 10 years ago, opened in October of 11, from Birch Avenue to Ellsworth Falls. We are under absolutely no obligation whatsoever to plow that or to clear that. We never have been. That stipulation came in 2015 with DOT. Our path came 4 years prior. So I don't know how the hell we got up to 6 miles. But the section that we're talking about is 4/10 of a mile long. 8/10, if you want to go both ways, if we're bound and determined to clear both lanes, if you will. Let's keep in mind that the path that we have now is heavily used. It's extremely heavily used. I must have, today alone, I know I met 60 or 70 people in the 2 walks that I took this morning and afternoon, both lengths, the full length of it. This is a safe path for adults, children, seniors, anyone that wants to use it. They don't have to worry about traffic. They don't have to worry that their safety is going to be impaired by being on a path like this. Let's talk health for a minute. 72% of the people in the state of Maine are either overweight or obese. The increase in diabetes in this state since 1990 is phenomenal. It's at least quadrupled. Diabetes 2 is because of obesity and overweight. We need to do something about it. Having this path that people can walk on anytime they want is tantamount to any of this clearing of the damn snow discussion. This is cheap dollars that will save lives and improves people's health. So let's not get stuck on, a 5 or 6 mile path that we have no obligation to clear. That path is used 12 months out of the year. The kids that walk to the high school on it, they do a very good job of creating a walking path in that snow. So forget the cost of alleged equipment or another employee or whatever. We have done other things for the citizens of Ellsworth, for their health. We've put in trails up to Ellsworth Falls. We have a myriad of sidewalks throughout the city. We don't have a safe passage from Main Street to Birch Avenue, as far as the sidewalk is concerned. This will be the de facto sidewalk until the state gets off their butt and corrects Oak Street and builds it to standards with a sidewalk. But in the meantime, let's move this discussion along, please, and think of what we need to do for the people. Thank you.
Councilor Lyons?
I don't think you're gonna get all those people with diabetes out there walking every day.
You would
They
be,
haven't been doing it since 1990, they're not gonna start now.
you would be surprised.
Councilor?
One of the things that I read when researching what the DOT walkable, bikeable project, green transport specifically was about was environmentalism and to get people out of cars and onto green transport. It also stated that they wanted these bike paths, walkable paths within 2 mile radius of all schools, which this falls into that category. The question I have is, we already have a school bus that takes children from that 2 mile radius to school. And so what's going to happen to the school bus schedule? Are we going to increase the distance and tell kids that if they live in that 2 mile radius that they now have to walk to school?
I
What?
don't.
I guess I would say, as far as the path itself, if you look at communities across the country, in the state, having walking paths are a positive addition to communities. It is. It adds value to a community. It adds opportunities for economic development. There's no question about that. There's so many studies out there. It can't be debated on that fact alone. And for this city, Water Street is not going to get a sidewalk. It just isn't. We can't even get the road to be up to the specs that we'd like to. We're never going to get that street to have sidewalks. And we're going to have a lot of places in the city that just sidewalks aren't available. So to be able to put in a walking path, I think, is a positive for the community. How we pay for it is important. And the costs that go into it in terms of how much we pay for it absolutely is a consideration when we have so many competing demands. I think we have to think about that in the context of the value it brings and how we can leverage it to get the most free money to support that. And I know there are grants out there that once it's shovel-ready, that it doesn't come with requirements for additional capital. And that's a reality. So we can, as a city, we can say, nope, we're not going to be forward-thinking. We're never going to do anything that's going to cost any money because we don't want to spend any money. We have to look at connect all the dots. And I think this is a project that has a lot of merit. I think we need to be smart about how much we spend on the front end and what we do with it to get it ready as quickly as possible to start leveraging in more money and reduce the costs on taxpayers. Because whether it's for exercise, whether it's for individuals just being able to walk from point A to point B, it has value. It will bring value. It will be a positive addition. And, you know, we have the connection. It will connect the ATV trail, Sunrise Trail, to the city. We get hopefully it will propel getting a crosswalk in that area so that people can cross from that entrance. It has a lot of potential to connect the entire city in a way that it doesn't exist now. So I hope we don't take in, you know, the adage of, you know, at this point, you know, save a few cents and then miss the opportunity for leveraging a lot more in return. And I just hope that we consider that. Council Phillips.
I have no issue with the walking park. As I said originally, it's a great idea. What I don't like is the proposal in front of us comes with strings. And using the budget that was put together, it's an additional $1.1 million over 20 years. And obligates us every year to take care of it. If we're going to do it, I don't have any problem to do it. We'd be just as intelligent to fund it ourselves and not take the strings that are coming to that. That comes with that free money, because it's not free. We're seeing that right in front of us now. And then the benefits of walking, I understand that, Mark, we all do. And it's a quality of life issue, and it's a great addition to Ellsworth quality of life. But it's a 20-year tag that comes with that. And we'd be remiss not to consider that.
If I may, I just would like to point out, and you can certainly correct my figures, but the 500,000 that is in front of you today is to complete the trail from where it ends now to Main Street. The phase 2, as it's been put, is a much, much, much more expensive completion. You're talking 1.5 million as a ballpark figure. So if we were to fund, as you're suggesting, this phase 1, we're then going to need additional funding to get the engineering and all of the 60% that was going to be funded with that 500,000 or 400,000 from Maine DOT in order to get that process beginning on that second phase, which is a much more significant and I'm fairly confident phase that the city's not going to want to be funding on its own. So if we then pursue DOT funding for that section, we're still going to be held to this same requirement of maintenance. So,
Council Phillips?
The other problem with that, though, is that the maximum on this grant's 400,000. So you can spend 1.5, you're still off 1.1 million out
Yeah,
of this grant.
we would have to find additional funding sources.
Yeah.
I've already identified one, it's only 120,000, but that's what, let's say Brewer, they waited and they found a funding source finally that would fund the entire thing. But you either cobble together funding sources,
Oh, yeah.
do some fundraising, or you go after it in total through some sort of bonding. But you'll never find, unless it's congressional earmarked dollars that they seem to be giving out lately, you'll never find that much money that you would be able to apply for a grant for.
Council Kaplan?
Have you looked into the RAISE grants or the Tiger grants?
Those are bigger DOT grants, yes. Have we looked at them for this particular project? No, I'm not sure this one would fit there.
I believe Pete Buttigieg, it's now called the Now Build or the Build Now
Yeah.
project, and it's specifically for the walking, biking trails.
Yeah, so delineate, so this one that we're going after is through the Federal Highway Administration, which is what the Tiger Grant is through as well. So with the Tiger, they try to basically divvy it up between different types of projects. And so yes, there is the ability to apply for bike ped trails. This is one out of, a few that we could go after. The reason that we're here today is because we've been encouraged by DOT to go after this one. And also because the deadline's July 15th. And so I want to, before we write a grant and sign on the line, we want to come before council and ask if, we can meet the eligibility criteria.
Is this going to be open at night? Is it going to be lit, well lit?
So there's no regulations now whether people can use it during day or night at the current trail. So I would assume that it would just be open to utilize.
So, question I have to Council, go
I
ahead,
just
Council
want to
Blanchard.
let Councilor Kaplan know a strong headlamp opens it at night. I have one. They work very well.
So to Councilor Phillips' point, I guess the question I have is, would we be better off, and I don't know if we have a cost estimate, of having the entire project, from the length of it, where the entirety of it, engineered, spend the money on that, and then pursue the dollars to build it, so that it's shovel-ready, and then that we can take advantage of more funding. And if it takes us back to this particular resource, great. If it doesn't, it just seems to me to chop it up, to spend that much and then do this next phase, why wouldn't we, I guess, what's the disadvantage of having the engineering done for the entire project, get it all ready, and then start working on finding the funding to build it? Is there a...
Can you do full engineering then? Can you do just engineering?
So the stipulation, at least behind another grant that I was looking at, is that the end product has to result in a trail. So in this case, you would at least have the beginning of a trail, right? Part of phase one of a trail. We would have to look into if you can apply for full engineering costs, and that's it. Because we wouldn't be able to fund full engineering of the entire thing, plus the construction of the first phase.
Well, we could,
Oh,
if you
if we
guys
put in
wanted
more
to
money.
spend more money,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well, I guess my question is, if we were going to spend X number of dollars by ourselves, to Councilor Phillips' point,
Get the other-
and if we access the money that we're getting, whatever way we did that, and we did that on our own, why wouldn't we, what would be the cost of engineering the whole thing and then looking for resources to build it? We wouldn't be under any stipulation if we're not pursuing this funding.
Correct. So engineering for each phase, what was it? It's probably about $500,000 between the two stages, right? It was 300 and something plus.
325 for phase one, and then, let's say 90. What's the construction and engineering?
I can't remember off the top of my head. Somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million, probably just for engineering, but that can't be right. I don't know. I don't have the numbers in front of me.
I was just looking to see
Councilor
if
Kaplan.
the criteria included.
So looking at the now build project, there's a specific goal of integration of walkable, bikeable paths into the transportation sector. And that specific grant, the now build, which used to be the Tiger Grant, is offering up to $1.4 million for rural communities or rural cities, which I would think we would qualify, and for your walkable, bikeable integration. And so, going along with what you've said, as far as looking at
You have to be on the stip.
the total project, why would we not look at getting the 1.4 million with fewer strings?
I don't know that build grants have fewer strings, so we can definitely, we can look into it, no doubt. The build is also federal dollars, correct? Which is also run through the same program that if you see this contract, it's in the back of her package, through the DOT, the local project administration program, the build grants, because we got a ship grant for the harbor, so the build grants also run through this program, which also comes with your ADA and maintenance type stipulations.
Yeah, and
So
this
I don't
was-
know that you get out of that maintenance stipulation by using a build grant.
And the research and some of the backing was done by the Robert Wood Foundation, I believe, so, not sure.
So I would agree with Council Blanchett on his comment about what the cost is to maintain it. I think that's down the road. I don't believe it's as presented. I think it can be done for less. But if we're able to leverage $1.4 million to pay for something versus 500,000, I just think having the whole project ready to go makes more sense if we can move that forward, because my concern is that we just end up not moving it quickly. If we're committed as a city to this trail from point A to point B, let's get it ready to go, do all that work, and as we're doing the work, we can be applying for different funding to start building it as we go, and we can do the building in phases. But to do it the way that we're talking about, it's going to take whatever amount of time it takes to engineer, and then we're gonna build the first phase, and time's gonna go by, and then we're gonna say, oh, now let's do the engineering for the next phase. That engineering's gonna take a lot longer. Let's do the work on the front end and move the project along in a way that I think would be faster and leverage more funding.
But it doesn't get a project built. It doesn't move the ball any. And you still have a street that isn't used, that is in horrible condition by anyone's standards, that has a myriad of ownership issues between the railroad, the state, and abutting property owners. It doesn't clear up any of that ownership. And it doesn't do a damn thing for the people of Ellsworth doing it that way. Bar Harbor's got a great walking path. Bucksport has a great walking path. Bangor has a great walking path. Ellsworth has a city council that just wants to dither and do nothing and just, be to look at nothing but the dollar and not spending it. What does not spending it do for the residents of Ellsworth? It doesn't do anything. It doesn't increase their safety, it doesn't increase their health, and it doesn't increase any attraction to the city by any future resident, anyone looking to move into the area. It doesn't improve economic development by doing nothing. We can plan all we want, we can engineer all we want, but if all we're doing is just engineering and then putting that engineering on the shelf, a la Beals Avenue, well, okay, you spend a lot of money on engineering, but I have yet to walk on on engineering plans and get any exercise. I walk on paths, so does everyone else.
Councilor Grindle?
I thought that the phase 1 and phase 2 engineering was going to take place basically simultaneously. So if we commit to this, we will also at the same time be moving forward with phase 2. And then once that's preliminarily engineered, we can go out for funding.
Right, so correct, so that's what we were doing math. So, we're only asking you for 140 on top of the DOT's 400. We can still take the DOT's 400.
We're asking for 100,
What did I say?
140.
Oh, sorry. They're giving us, we're asking 400 from the DOT, and we're asking from 100 for you guys. With an additional 150 or so, we could get full engineering and construction on the first set. We could get, you know what I mean? Like, the 100,000 is a minimum we have to match for the DOT grant. But if you say, okay, you can have 250,000, then we can add on to the task for for the engineering, and we can get full engineering for phase 1 and phase 2, as well as construction of phase 1. So it's not that we can't get full engineering.
Right.
So, did you?
No, go ahead.
So, Councilor Blanchard, I'm not, I guess my point is that I don't see what I'm having a hard time following is the roadmap, and thank you, Councilor Grindle. What I was hearing is engineering phase 1, build it. Now we're gonna move on. And what I don't know, and what I don't see, is how long do we expect engineering to take? And if you tell me that engineering and clearing up the right-of-way before we can even start construction is a 12 to 18-month process, and I'm assuming that's somewhere in that ballpark, we're not doing anything for 18 months. So my point was, if we start the engineering and we do phase 1 and we commit to keep continuing the engineering along and we're cleaning it up, we can then start the construction under the same time frame that we would if we were just doing this one section. That's my only point, is that it should be connected. There should be this overall clear plan that allows us to keep it moving and be able to seek funding. And what I was hearing, we're going to do this, and then we'll move on to that. And if we do that, it's going to be a long time before we see the kind of success we would like. So I think we're saying the same thing. It's just that we're missing a timeline that would help everybody to kind of visualize what we're talking about.
And I think that's what's happening. That's what the plan is we'd like to have this funding, this 100,000, us to commit to. We can discuss maintenance down the road, I understand. However, for us to sit here and say we're gonna build this great path, but we're not gonna maintain it, I think is irresponsible as well. We really need to have our sidewalks maintained, this path maintained. I think it would be really short-sighted to say, well, yeah, we'll build it, but we're not going to take care of it. So we do have to keep that in mind. They're asking for $50,000 of taxpayer funding, $50,000 of TIF funding, and a commitment to discuss the maintenance issue. I think it's a win-win. It's $150,000 to fix what is it? Pine Street?
Spring Street.
150 plus to even just fix that road. So, simple math, in my opinion, but.
Councilor Phillips.
And my only issue, as I spoke before, is the maintenance. It's the obligation. That doesn't mean we don't maintain it. That doesn't mean we are obligated to maintain it. That's the problem. When the state and the federal government start saying, we've got a good idea, come in, let us help you, you ought to run like hell, because you know it's attached. That's the problem with that, and there's no reason why we can't maintain it and go. And Mark, I'm pretty sure in front of your house is a 3-mile trail that we spent money on, that's a pretty damn nice walking path, and also I'm pretty sure that we spent quite a bit of money purchasing the city forest, and there's several miles of trails out there that people can walk on. So saying the council's dithering and never does anything, I think is pretty unfounded as well.
On this path, on this extension.
And I do believe.
And I just want to point out, we're throwing around the word maintenance, and specifically we're talking, it all refers to winter maintenance, winter plowing. The year-round maintenance, if there's fence repairs or anything else, we do that anyway. And we've done that since day one on the current path.
Councilor Kaplan.
As far as health goes, I mean, we do have a ribbon cutting for a senior park sometime this week. So,
Councilor Lyons.
And as of right now, you can walk from Birch Avenue to Main Street easily without any problems, unimpeded. And that road is in better shape than some of the main roads that we have, so,
Spring Street?
yes.
You walked it at night.
And I also, yeah, when it was dark, I didn't have a
Yeah.
headlight on.
Okay. Your
And I've drove
definition
it
of-
with my vehicle, and it's smoother than some of the main roads that we have.
So in terms of, last question I have is the obligation. If we're committing to the funding, so that you can apply for the grant.
Correct.
And in the interim, in terms of the grant, I assume there's time to do some of this work pulling it all together to say, okay, this is what it would cost for engineering, this would be the timeline, we could start phase one engineering. As we move to phase two engineering, we can start applying funding to start building phase one, and we keep that moving, and we can develop that as we, prior to accepting the funds.
So you will be getting funding. If we get this and we move forward with the application and we are awarded, you will get the money to build phase one. You will get full construction, or full engineering of first phase and preliminary engineering of second phase. That preliminary engineering of second phase will give us the opportunity to then start applying for grants for phase two. So
Okay.
that can happen simultaneously. So while they're building phase one, I can sit in my office and write as many grants as you like and try to fundraise as much as we can for phase two. Because I will have a definitive path of where it's gonna go and how much it's gonna cost us.
No pun intended, right?
Councilors, any further questions?
And just one more, the maintenance piece, as Counselor Grindle said, can be hashed out after. I mean, you will have to commit to maintenance, but whatever the costs are that are associated with that maintenance can be hashed out throughout the council.
Councilor
And with staff, you know, we can work on that together.
One thing we forgot to mention, is it can come out of TIF funds as well.
Yes.
The maintenance, because it
Yes.
qualifies.
Some of the maintenance
Under TIF.
costs, yes.
You'll see in your packet, I included a page from our TIF application that is been approved by the state back in 2011. And community-wide municipal investments means where you can put your TIF dollars throughout the entire community. And one of those that is listed here is costs related to planning, design, construction, maintenance, grooming, and improvements to new or existing recreational trails, et cetera, et cetera. So you can utilize TIF funds, which is why we said that a portion of that new, if there is a new employee's salary, could be paid out of TIF dollars and the equipment costs.
What would you like to do, Council?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
What would you like to do at this point?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion, two different motions, one at a time. First one would be to authorize a local match of up to $100,000 evenly allocated from FY '22 budgeted TIF and local roads funds in order to apply for up to $400,000 from the Maine DOT's bicycle and pedestrian program to fund Phase 1 full engineering and construction, and Phase 2 preliminary engineering of the city's bike and pedestrian trail extension.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Discussion. All those in favor? All those opposed? 6-1, motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, second motion I'd like to make is to commit to a trail maintenance plan budgeted from future TIF funds and highway department funds.
Second.
Discussion. I would just like to say, is that a requirement of the grant?
Yes, so the requirement is the applicant has committed to maintaining the proposed project's improvements, including winter maintenance for the next 20 years. So the keyword is committed.
Can you restate the motion?
To commit to a trail maintenance plan budgeted from future TIF funds and highway department funds.
Councilor Caplan.
Does it have to come from highway funds?
Oh,
Can
so-
it come solely from TIF funds?
So if this hypothetical person that we hire does other things that are not related to the trail, so like if they become part of the highway crew, then we can't pay for it through TIF funds. But if they are solely, their sole purpose is to work on the trail, then yes.
So I guess,
Which is why we did a portion, because if there was a new employee at the highway department, we would say 20% of their time over the course of the year would be spent on the trail, which is why she potentially could fund 20% of that salary out of TIF.
so I guess my suggestion would be that I don't know why we would obligate ourselves to a specific funding source, other than if it's all it's saying is that we're committing to maintenance. Can't we just do a motion that we commit to maintenance, and then we develop that? Year one, it might look different than year 15. But to put that in there is gonna bind us as a city to a certain way of funding. And don't we just have to say that we're committing to it?
Absolutely. And like I said, it's flexible. We can discuss that at a workshop or something between staff and that's if we get this grant, right? If we don't get it, then we don't have to have that conversation.
So my recommendation, if you were willing to accept it, is to modify it of just saying that we're committing to maintaining it and leaving out of how we're gonna fund it.
I'll accept that.
Do you agree with?
Second.
Second. Is everybody clear about that motion? Yes. Any further discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item 10, Council Order Number 052109, discussion and action on a proposed change to the start time of the council meetings to 6 PM. I sponsored this item. It was tabled at the May 17th, 2021 regular council meeting. I'll start with, one of the things I was interested in hearing was from the community. I didn't hear much one way or the other in terms of if it impacted people. I think it's one of those situations that this time impacts some people, 6 o'clock impacts some people, so that's my sense, because I didn't get an overwhelming reaction in any direction, so. Council Kaplan.
As a mom, it gives me time to cook dinner before I get in here. So if it's 6 o'clock, then it's probably gonna be fast food, which is, I think, I was gonna say, I think that Mr.
Are you
Blanchett
trying to?
would-
And isn't it by charter, you've set the time at our annual organizational meeting, you can't adjust it now anyway?
Not by charter.
What's that?
It's not by charter.
It isn't by charter?
It's by the annual meeting in November.
But can we alter that here in the middle of the stream?
We set the rules.
We-
You got 3 more months,
You
play
can-
with it
yeah,
next time.
I'm-
Well, the school board meets at 6 o'clock, and they moved theirs from 6:30 to 6 o'clock. I think it should be uniform throughout the city for the big meetings in the city to be at 6 o'clock.
Then let the school board move their meeting to 7.
I don't think they're gonna
Make
do
it
that.
uniform.
I don't think they're gonna do that.
I'm fine with it either way.
Way to take a stand.
It doesn't, I have to put aside the hours to come here, so if we start early, we can run later.
That seems to be the trend.
You just made everybody so happy.
Well, that's how it always works at work.
Yeah,
We win early, so we get done early, we end up working later, so.
Does anyone want to take any action?
I make a motion, we move the city council meetings till 6 o'clock, from 7 o'clock.
You have a motion.
Second.
There's a second. Any further discussion? I kind of agree with Councilor Phillips. I'm agreeing with you tonight a lot. I agree with you. I think waiting till November makes sense in terms of organizational meeting, if we're going to change it. But So, but that's just my 2 cents. Other comments? All right, all those in favor of changing the time to 6 o'clock? All those opposed? Motion fails.
Mr. Blanchett, you've
Well,
seen
I'm
the kids
open-minded.
win, That's food.
He's appeasing.
I'll buy. I'll buy a nickel.
Well, that was easy.
What? The air back on? All right. Consent agenda. All items with an asterisk are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless the council member so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence on the agenda. Number 11, Council Order Number 062100, request of the Deputy Treasurer Tax Collector to set real estate and personal property tax due dates at September 9th, 2021 and March 10th, 2022. Item 12, Council Order Number 062101, request of the Deputy Treasurer Tax Collector for an order of the municipal offices on the application of real estate and personal property tax payments. This order will allow for the tax collector and treasurer to apply tax payments against the oldest unpaid tax bills. Item 13, Council Order Number 062102, request of the City Clerk for review and acceptance of the results from the June 8th, 2021 City of Ellsworth School Budget Validation Special Municipal Referendum Election. Do any of the councils want any of these items removed? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Move as presented, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. New business, public hearing and action on the application for new or renewal of the following licenses. Pavada Yistrat Young, DBA Thai Sana, 321 High Street, for renewal of a city Class C license, liquor and victualler, and renewal of a state restaurant malt and vinous Class 3 and 4 liquor license. This is a public hearing. I will open the public hearing. Public hearing is open. I'm assuming all the applications are in order? They are. Anybody want to make a comment? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Public hearing is closed.
Mr. Chairman, move approval of the request of the Thai Sana for renewal.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Lord's Empire Incorporated, DBA Dragonfire, 248 State Street, for renewal of a city Class B licensed victular liquor and arcade under 12 devices, and renewal of a state restaurant Class 3 and 4 malt and vinous liquor license. This is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. Public hearing is open. Any comments? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Public hearing is closed.
Move approval of the applicant, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Gary Ellsworth Incorporated, DBA Ramada by Wyndham Ellsworth, 215 High Street, for a new city lodging license. This is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. Public hearing is open. Any
New
comments?
application.
Oh, it's a new application. So is
I'm
the,
here to represent the property, Andrew Glidden, general manager.
any questions?
Is that Matthew?
You want to make any,
No,
you sure?
just new, same operations, new ownership.
Yeah.
We asked. I'll close the public hearing. Public hearing is closed.
Mr. Chairman, move approval of the new license for the Ramada.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous.
Good luck. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thanks.
Is it still going to be a Ramada?
Yes, yes, yep. As far as I know. Thank you.
Be holiday in next week.
Item 15, Council Order Number 062103, appointment of city officials by the City Council. 15A, new appointment, Joshua McIntyre, Treasurer. City Manager, do you want to make an introduction? Or?
Sure. I think most of you have already had the opportunity to meet Mr. McIntyre. Come up to the podium. Josh is a longtime resident of the city of Ellsworth, graduate of Ellsworth High School, and has taken advantage of the opportunity to come back home and serve his hometown community. He comes with us with a wealth of knowledge and experience in the world of finance, and very excited to have him on board.
Thank you, Josh. Thanks, Glenn. Yeah, as Glenn said, I was born and raised here in Ellsworth, graduate of Ellsworth High School. I moved back to Maine about 4.5 years ago, and when this opportunity came up, I thought it was just the perfect thing to be able to come back to Ellsworth, and my family still lives here, and to be part of the community again was a great opportunity. So settling into the work already, and getting to learn how things work and how meetings with my colleagues, and so I think it's off to a great start so far.
So, welcome officially.
Thank you.
Council?
Oh, I was just
Sure.
saying hi.
No, is there a motion?
Oh. Move to approve.
We have a motion?
Second.
Second? Any discussion? All those in favor? It's official.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Halfway there. Well, as treasurer, if he's lucky, he may make it finance director in the next motion.
That's right. You'll be back. 15B, reappointments. So in our packets, we have the list of all the reappointments.
Mr. Chairman, move approval of the reappointments. If you're looking for that. you can treat
We have a
them
motion?
separately.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Yeah, all set?
I think so.
Okay. Councilman Blanchett.
Does this mean that the city manager is tree warden once again?
Yeah, by the looks
It
of
it does.
The coveted,
Coveted
the
position.
most coveted part of my job, tree warden, yes.
Keep your axe sharp.
I use a chainsaw, no axe.
Quicker.
I think I lost control about 7:01. All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes. All right, item 16. Council order number 062104, approval of city manager's appointments. 16A, new appointment, Joshua McIntyre, finance director. Wonder what happens if we only approve him just for treasurer?
He'd have to take a dramatic pay cut.
Any discussion?
Move approval, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion?
Second.
We have a second. Discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. And 16B, reappointments. Again, those are included in your packet.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? All set? All those in favor? Unanimous. Item 17, public hearing and action on council order number 062105, authorization for tax anticipation borrowing of $2 million.
Good evening, Jennifer Merchant, Deputy Finance Director. On June 18th of 2021 at 10 a.m., the city accepted bids for a tax anticipation note. The proceeds of this TAN will be used for financial government activities and obligations of the city in anticipation of funds to be raised for taxation, so for our cash flow purposes. In preparation, we did a cash analysis and determined that we would need approximately $2 million to best fit the needs of the city. Key Bank came in at a rate of 0.50 for the total interest of $9,972.60. And if you were to approve this bid, that would be our interest rate.
Questions? Council Blanchett.
This is the one thing that I've never understood. So, you probably couldn't beat it in my head. Why we borrow $2,000 and pay back $50,000 more, $2 million, and pay back $50,000 every single year in interest.
It's just for cash flow purposes because our taxes don't start coming in.
I just, like I said, you probably couldn't beat it in my head. It's like for a month or two, right?
Well, we end up paying it in June.
How come we haven't just got that in the bank to pay that and not have to borrow it every year?
Well, if you did that, so let's say we were looking ahead to do that for next year, we would have to actually overtax the community to have a $2 million cash surplus that would go into the bank. So the taxpayers would be funding $2 million to have cash sitting there for a cash balance.
Somewhere along the line, we're paying for it anyway, plus we're paying 50,000 extra.
Well, this year, it's
No,
only
it's good.
$9,972, because the interest rate is 0.50.
The difference is, well, you know what? I'm going to stop talking because there's somebody that is an accountant that might know this
Okay.
and be able to explain this much better than myself.
I'm not being wise.
Not to call her
I don't
out,
think
but,
that- I
You got
just,
thrown under the bus.
well, I'm sitting here digging a hole and she could just.
well, that's good.
No?
I just don't understand it.
No, it's
Because
cash flow.
when you do the
It is
budget
cash flow.
and you've approved the budget, you still have a payroll to get through until the taxes are actually collected. So the fiscal year ends, but the payroll's still there until the tax money comes in.
It's just not.
Did we even go into the TAN this past fiscal year?
Yeah, we took it
We
in
did.
July. This year, Josh and I have been talking about it, and we're gonna try to do it on an as-needed basis, so not necessarily
up
take the
front.
whole 2 million in July.
So the interest would be less
I
than the
still-
9,000.
I'm
Don't feel
just,
bad, I asked the same question last
I'm
year.
just puzzled with it.
No, it's a great question in terms of, the difference is that it's having access to cash to pay the bills. And if you draw out, let's say that in the bank, the city needs $10,000, there's no more money, they would grab the $10,000 from this account to pay the bill, and as tax money comes in, that backfills the bank account, and you're able to continue to pay your bills.
Doesn't that kind of mean that we're like behind on whatever? I mean,
No, it's
if
similar.
I have to borrow money to pay my bills, I'm behind.
It's similar to, let's narrow it down to a family basis, okay? You get a job, you have 2 kids, you're gonna get paid in 2 weeks, but your daycare provider needs to be paid this week. You may have to put that on a credit card.
Well, that's what I have it in my bank account for, though.
But if you're just starting a job, right, you don't have it. So the city is going to get the tax money, but we still have the bills, and we still have to pay the city employees and all of the health insurance and things like that until the tax money actually does come in.
Is there ever a time where we could put the $2 million in the bank and not have to borrow the money? It's always gonna be this way forever and ever and ever.
Well, we have to cut the budget significantly, but also if we cut the budget significantly, then we are gonna be taxing excessively.
We just hired somebody that might answer this.
There you go.
So I
I'll
probably
take
should have
his
come up
word on it,
earlier.
whatever he tells me,
As-
I'll take his
as
word.
Jen mentioned earlier, I think when we took a look at the needs from this year, in the past couple of years as well, it looked like the overall cash flow situation was a little bit better in previous years. So we tried to add in some flexibility as far as taking it out as needed, rather than just taking it out completely right when we had the opportunity and then paying it back. And I think that as we go forward, the finance department and Glenn can look a little more closely at some cash flow management strategies and then perhaps reduce the need of that, because it is, as Chair Hamilton was saying, it's more of a timing issue than having the money overall available. And I think if we make some tweaks, perhaps we can get to a point where we won't need that in the future. No promises.
Like I said, you couldn't beat it in my head, because it's just not there yet.
Well, and I think I appreciate the question because I'm sure there are other people listening that have this exact same question. So it's helpful to dive into it so that people understand why we're doing this as opposed to, not taking out $2 million. So thank you for raising it. And we'll work on it.
Hey, thanks for the explanation, and everybody here that explained it. I still don't get it. but-
Just, Jane, just think.
Thank you.
If you only had 2 paychecks a year, how would you structure money? Which is what happens in the city of Ellsworth.
You gotta stretch it, put her on the stretcher.
You got a two-peak, you got two peak seasons of money, and that's it. Everything's gotta go.
Okay, we still haven't taken action on this.
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the tax anticipation note low bid to Key Bank at an interest rate of 0.5%.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Item 18, public hearing and action on budget resolutions for FY 2022.
Okay, so in the interest of sparing some kind of semblance of time here, and the fact that we have had many, many meetings, many, many workshops to go through this budget, I'm gonna hit some highlights. First off, I just want to give a sincere thanks to Jen Merchant for all of her work that she's put into this budget, as well as all of the department heads who had put a significant amount of effort into preparing their budgets that they forwarded on to us, and to all of you for sitting through all the workshops and all of the painful discussions that we've had over the last couple of months to get to this point. That being said, you all have been provided the municipal budget summary sheet, and I've broken it down a little bit further. Administrative, I'm not gonna get into the weeds too far on that particular line item, because that deals with all of the administrative folks in City Hall, myself and all of the tax staff, finance department, all of those folks. That budget stands at $4,241,552. Public safety stands at $3,622,454. And I did break that down because I know people are extremely interested in the public safety line item. The police budget this year stands at $1,486,336, and that's down 0.89% from last year. The fire department stands at $1,449,879, and that's an increase of 10% from last year. A significant portion of that increase is a result of the Northern Light service agreement that you all approved a couple of meetings ago, and as well as retirement payouts to that account forced a significant increase. Also in public safety, we have dispatch, which stands at $207,739. So those are the three components of our public safety department that make up that total budget. Public Works this year came in at $1,881,947. And you can look at those other accounts. I'm not going to go through all of those. Public Library stands at $648,172. So a total operating budget for those departments and those others listed is standing at $12,684,124, which is a 1.51% increase over last year. Capital improvement currently stands at $1,175,000. And so when you add the capital improvement to the operating budget, you come up with a final increase to the total budget for this year of 2.94%. City appropriations for the school department stands at $11,566,606, which is a 0.06 increase. And is everyone following? Am I going too quickly?
So when you had started off, you said that the subtotal for general government was 4 million something, but in my packet, it's 5,113,000. Is there a change somewhere that I didn't know about? And then the final total was 13,555,688, and you had $12,684,124.
What's-
Her number's correct?
Mark?
Outdated summary sheet.
Library isn't correct.
Right?
I don't know.
That's what I want to find out.
We can approve the lower amount, but somebody might be unhappy.
Even, still doesn't make sense.
Get up to page over.
You want to borrow mine? My number's.
That's the original submission from the manager's budget.
Then we about 60,000 to roll over.
Right.
So you would add 60,000.
Oh, does that get to that too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh. Almost a,
should get a
it's
special
almost $1
rate.
million
No,
difference.
it's not, no, I don't think so.
So originally 170 is reduced by that.
Right. Which would take it down to 460 something.
Well, no. This includes that 83,000 reduction. But if we take, so we added back 60,000
Yep, and include the
But how much?
revote.
for the rollovers,
How much
Okay,
tax
okay,
paid?
yeah, thank you.
461. For this
What's the
current budget year,
900,000 and
it's
the
60,000.
461.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, I'm going to take a
So
5-minute
that's-
recess while we're sorting this out.
Is that an expense or is that a credit?
I'm going to take a 5-minute recess while we sort some of the numbers to make sure we have exactly what we're voting on. So give everybody a chance if you need to take a break, so you're not just sitting here waiting. So we'll take a 5-minute recess.
That's your expenses, and then the revenues are down at the bottom.
Everyone ready?
As long as we're not- At work, they had to buy me a new piston.
All right,
because-
I'll call us back to order. We'll pretend like that never happened and we're on the budget.
Thank you, sir. So the confusion was, my sheet had the TIF expenses separated out from the sheet that you're reading from. So when you add in the TIF expenses of $871,564, which goes directly into that administration line item, that's where you come up with the discrepancy. So, but ultimately, the total appropriations are the $14,733,688,000. And then the city, the overall final budget number that you're voting on tonight is $20,822,790. And that includes the school appropriation that I went over earlier. So I wanted to highlight just a couple of outside agencies and organizations, because some of these discussions have been a bit of time since we talked about them. So I just wanted to go through and for you all to just have a kind of an update as to where we ended up through all of those discussions. So the Snowmobile Club was $1,500. The Chamber of Commerce was $10,000. Friends in Action operating was $5,000. Eastern Area on Aging was $1,000. Down East Transportation was $2,500. Hospice Volunteers of Hancock County was $1,500. Ellsworth Free Clinic was $1,000. The WIC program was $1,500. Friends in Action was $1,200. Loaves and Fishes was $5,000. Amaya Center Homeless Shelter was $1,200. Everybody Eats was $500. Families First Community Center was $1,000. And Your Place Inc. was $500. Recreational, the YMCA was $62,000. Concert band was $1,400. The Grand Auditorium for programming was $7,500. The Grand Auditorium for vacation movies was $2,500. Grand Auditorium Summer Concert Series was $3,000. The Grand Educational Programs was $8,000. Ellsworth Music Institute is $2,500. The Challenger Program is $2,500. The parade is $5,000. Ice rink maintenance and supplies is $3,200. And a new line item that's been created for beautification for the downtown is $2,500.
Councilors, questions on the budgets? Any comments? Councilor Grindle?
Just clarification on the beautification. We just wanted, I proposed this, I wanted to keep it consistent. So it originally was requested by the Heart of Ellsworth. So I think what will happen, Jen, correct me if I'm wrong, they'll have to submit invoices for the beautification, the flowers and that sort of thing, and then you will reimburse them for that. Similar, and this is similar to what we do with the ice rink and the Down East Family YMCA. So we wanted to keep that consistent, so.
So I would want to thank manager and all the staff. I know putting this budget together is very difficult. It's complicated. There are many moving parts, and you're stepping into a new role at the same time, and we're dealing with a pandemic. I mean, there's just a lot of things this year that dynamics that played into trying to pull this budget together. As a member of the council, it's certainly, this is by far I think probably one of the most important things we do in terms of overseeing taxpayer dollars and trying to put together a budget that reflects the needs of the city in a way that also doesn't overburden the members of our community and the taxpayers. And that's always a delicate balance. And one of the things that I think has been accomplished with this budget, and I think the last few budgets, is the fact that although there's a slight increase, it has remained pretty flat. If you look back over, and I would ask the community to go back and look over the last 5 years, what our mill rate has been, it has been pretty flat for that amount of time. And that's pretty remarkable given where we're at with just the economy and needs. And I would say with this budget, one of the things that I think is going to come out of it is that we've moved closer and moved forward in terms of having projects that, although the mill rate's not going up, we are moving the needle on some important projects, and that there are some things that are in motion where we're addressing some of the needs, some of the roads issues, capital expenditures and capital purchases. I think there's a rhythm that's going now where we're able to leverage our resources more efficiently and get better results without having to put a tremendous amount of burden on taxpayers. So I want to say thank you to the entire city staff, all the city employees who work very hard, and certainly to all the members of the council. It's a long process, but I think it was a well thought out process, and you know, no one's going to agree 100% on anything when comes time for a budget, but I think we've done a pretty good job in terms of presenting something that's reasonable for the community.
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the fiscal year 2022 budget as presented.
We're going to pause for just a second. I was just about to. So the budget is a public hearing, as was the TAN. So I'm going to open the public hearing on both the TAN and the budget. And if there are any comments on the TAN, I will then ask the council to consider that action based on those comments. So this is a public hearing. I'm going to open the public hearing on both the TAN request, the $2 million, and also on the budget. So seeing no comments, I will close the public hearing. Public hearing is closed. Just to double check, we had no further comments on the TAN. Does anybody want to revisit that? Okay. Then on to the budget. Yep. Councilor Kaplan.
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the fiscal year 2022 budget as presented in the amount of $20,822,790.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Council Phillips.
Prior to doing that, where are the wastewater and water budgets? Aren't they usually enacted at the same time?
Yes, that's my bad.
They're attached. What they have
And that's part of the number that,
They have separate motions. Correct. So we'll be doing one motion for the municipal side, and then there'll be another motion for the enterprise accounts.
so that is an impressive.
So we're on the municipal side, a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor? Unanimous. Now we have the enterprise wastewater water.
So, if you'd like to start with wastewater.
And as if I remember right, were we not done with the water side? Didn't Reggie, we still have the discussion of how much to adjust? I don't think we've ever revisited that. with the
So
rates.
I can address that. So we've removed the Lagoons project and the Surrey Road project out of this year's budget proposal for the water department because we can bring those items back at any point when we have the information necessary to move them forward. But we're not prepared at this point to do that. We're taking a look at some funding sources. We're going to need to do a rate study. And through these, with the assistance of Wooden and Curran, we're taking a hard look at what we can possibly leverage by bringing multiple significant projects together into one larger package, because there's a lot more funding sources available for, say, $12 to $13 million than there is for a $3 million project here, a $4 million project there. So we're doing some research and taking a closer look at that, so those two particular items have been removed from this year's budget for now. So in your packet, you'll see,
They don't have it. I use this
Oh.
spreadsheet if you want.
okay. So Jen, you wanna come up, please, and just, I don't wanna read the wrong number. This is the,
So that is the total water.
yep.
So that's the total.
So the total water, and we will get you this document, but the total water department is $1,335,778. And if you'd like, I can just kind of give you the highlights since you don't have this information in front of you. You're looking at wages of $324,908, employee benefits of $35,000, electricity $90,000, heating fuels $6,500, chemicals $84,000, materials and supplies $78,000, contractual services engineering $38,100, $4,000 for account services, $40,000 contractual services miscellaneous, vehicle maintenance $18,000, $3,000 for vehicle insurance, liability insurance of $5,600, workers' compensation $7,500, health insurance $74,622, miscellaneous expenses of $70,000, for a subtotal of $879,230. They did have, he did have $127,105 in total capital expense requests, and a debt service of $329,443, which gets you to that $1,335,770.
Okay.
Do we
Councilor Caplan.
have a council order number for that?
It falls under the budget, and what we're missing were the actual,
That- The other issue is that's not in the public record. So what went out to the public did not include that budget nor the resolution for it. I'm 99% sure we really can't act on it tonight. We may be able to do a continuing resolution until the next meeting, but I think public notice, doesn't that have to be?
It went out as part of the budget, it just wasn't in your packets.
No packet, and the motion is thin.
I don't know about the motion. It's always been.
No, I care. We'll vote on it. I'm not worried about
I
it.
don't think it's ever been separate in the past since I've been here.
It's always been as the one packet, and one budget resolution.
so the public had access to the information in terms of the material?
It was in the budget
It
that was
was-
posted, it
right.
just wasn't in the backup
Right.
information. It was in the book that's been available, and
That's the important part. That's what I think Council Phillips is saying, is just making sure that that was received, that the public had a chance to see that in advance versus it just not being in our packet.
it was posted on the website, Jen, with the rest of the budget information.
The resolution wasn't, but the budgets were.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
So let me just recap where we're at so that we're all operating from the same place, and especially the public. The information related to the budget was posted and included the enterprise accounts, the wastewater, and the water department information budget. What wasn't included in the council packets was that information. That was excluded in terms of the total amounts. So that was the piece that, as we were looking at this, we did not have those two items or two departments included in the packet and didn't have the final total. What I would like to suggest is, since the public has had this information, they're aware of it, and nothing has changed with it, other than understanding some of the information that you just shared in terms of putting on hold those two projects, which means that at this point, we're not pursuing a rate increase, and there isn't going to be a change there. And if there is a movement on that, you'll bring it back to the council at some future date. So I would have you finish with those accounts, and then I'm going to ask that we go back and vote on the entire budget again, having this information included, so that our vote is very clear that it's inclusive of everything. So we'll redo the vote based on that after you finish sharing that information.
Okay? And I do apologize for the confusion, but we just went through the water department, and the final department would be wastewater. And now that you have your packet, you'll see on the final page of your packet, the total wastewater treatment plant budget is $1,783,622. And I won't take the time to go through all line item by line item since you have that information in front of you now.
Any questions, comments? Councilor Kaplan, do you want to make the motion again?
So you said that that's the total wastewater, not the total water, right?
Correct.
Don't we need to include the total water department?
Yes. Water was $1,335,778.
And these amounts don't change the overall
That's correct.
budget.
They're enterprise accounts. Funding does not come out of taxpayers.
So do you want to just redo the, now that we have inclusive, let's vote so that we're clean on this issue.
Mr. Chairman, move to improve the fiscal budget for fiscal year 2022 in the sum of $20,822,790, which constitutes the estimated requirements of the various city accounts for fiscal year 2022 based on the budget submitted by the city manager as provided by the charter. Be raised assessments upon the inhabitants of the city of Ellsworth and upon the estates of non-resident proprietors with the city for the present municipal year, and that the sums hereby appropriated, any additional sums as otherwise provided for the amount for each purpose being specified.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. Further discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. All right. Item 19, Council Order Number 062106, request of the Deputy Treasurer Tax Collector to set the interest rate on overdue taxes.
Good evening. I'm Sue McLean, the tax collector. Every June, we come before you and present a request to set the interest rate on overdue taxes. The maximum rate of interest is established by the Treasurer of State and is based on the prime rate as it's published in the Wall Street Journal. This year, the Treasurer of State has posted the maximum rate at 6%. In the past, we've always stayed within 2 or 3% of the maximum. However, I'm recommending that we remain at 6% for at least another year. We've had 6% for the last 4 years. I just feel that we should probably, the way things are now, we should probably keep it at 6%, not change it. And so I'm just asking the council if they wish to stay at that rate or change it for the fiscal year of 2022.
Councilor Kaplan.
There are some people in Ellsworth that are having a pretty tough time with taxes. One resident comes to mind, 97-year-old veteran. Just can't imagine charging him 6%. If I had my way, his whole bill would be forgiven.
What do you want to do?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve Council Order 062106, requested the tax collector deputy treasurer to set the interest rate on overdue taxes at, I'll throw 6%.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion. Counsel Caplan.
What do we do when they just can't even afford the 6%?
Well, there is a process that individuals can go through in terms of requesting. It's not the end of the process, I should say. Other discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council Order Number 0621007, request of the interim fire chief to accept a revised agreement between the City of Ellsworth and the County of Hancock to provide fire protection and emergency services to Fletcher's Landing Township for a term of 3 years.
And now for some good news. This contract is not unlike the contract that we've had previous years. Really, the only change is it's a 3-year contract. $17,500 per year paid to the city. And just as an idea of our responses to that area, we've responded there. Last year, we responded 15 times. 10 of those times were for EMS calls. That's up 4 calls from the previous year. Still a good deal for the city as far as responses goes. And I would ask that the city council vote to accept this 3-year contract.
Just a clarifying question out of interest. So we're obligated, are those calls, the EMS calls, are those where we're just responding solely, or are we responding as part of?
We're responding as first responders per our license with Northern Light. If they're not available, a mutual aid ambulance would be doing the transporting. And we're responding there for EMS calls just as first responders. Along with, structure fires
Yeah,
and vehicle accidents and all of those other things that we would respond to.
I guess a better question is, under the requirements, technically under the requirements, we are responsible by the rules to respond to all calls, all the EMS calls. We have to send somebody. That was something that we've gone over, that when Northern Light gets called, we have to also respond to that in the city of Ellsworth.
If we're available.
If we're available.
If we're available. Now, as far as Fletcher's Landing is concerned, if we're available. If we have a call in Ellsworth and our people are tied up in Ellsworth, they're tied up in Ellsworth. And sorry, folks, we can't respond to that particular call because we're committed to the city of Ellsworth.
Because this agreement was originally for fire service. It wasn't inclusive of EMS.
Last year's contract, it did include EMS services.
That was built in?
Yep. Yep. The only change from last year to this year is the 3-year term.
Okay.
Which would coincide to when the service agreement with Northern Light would come up. We can reassess at that point.
Any other questions? Council Blanchard?
You ready?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the request of the fire chief to accept a revised agreement between the City of Ellsworth and the County of Hancock to provide fire protection and emergency services to Fletcher's Landing Township for a term of 3 years for the annual sum of $17,500.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. Item 21, public hearing and action on amendments to the City of Ellsworth Code of Ordinances, Chapter 4, Fire Prevention Codes and Ordinances.
All right, a little history on this one. This original ordinance was proposed back in 2008 by former Fire Chief John Marshall, who I've interviewed, along with former Inspector Mike Haney. According to what they've told me, John Marshall, who was chief at the time, proposed the original language for this fire protection ordinance. In the original language, it was going to be proposed because of the use of
lightweight building construction that was coming into the market. The original proposal was that all residential homes in the city of Ellsworth shall be sprinkled. Knowing that that was going to probably meet with some resistance, there were some compromises developed. And in the proposed ordinance that was approved by the city council, there were 3 options for building developers who are developing subdivisions. And the 3 options were, if there's a water main close, you would hook onto the water main and provide fire hydrants every 1,000 feet or so. In lieu of having a water line, another option was to provide an underground cistern or a water tank consisting of 10,000 gallons every 1,000 feet or so. The third option would be to have the home sprinkled. Okay, so we had 3 options available in this ordinance. And that was approved by the city council in 2008. And it's worked well. We've used NFPA 1142 as a standard that gave us these options to provide water supply for fire protection in these housing developments, these subdivisions. Because essentially what's happening is they're developing neighborhoods with, you know, upwards to 14, 15, however many lots. So we just wanted to make sure that there was some regard for water supply for fire protection. So what I'm asking tonight is that the council entertain a motion to keep Chapter 4 as it is written with these 3 options. Now, that being said, NFPA 1142 also gives the authority having jurisdiction the leeway to negotiate, if you will, what these 3 options look like. For example, an underground cistern. In the ordinance, it says it's every 1,000 feet. Well, there's some compromises, there's some negotiation that could be had with that. Maybe instead of every 1,000 feet, maybe there's one centrally located and it's 20,000 gallons. Okay, so there's things that we can work with there, and NFPA 1142 gives us those options, gives us that leeway to work with developers. Okay, so the recommendation that I would have is to keep the ordinance as written. If the council would like to workshop this, there's some educational components that can come into play as to what lightweight building construction looks like, how it burns, you know, what happens when it's under a fire load, and what a difference sprinklers make, residential home sprinklers. They can make a huge difference. So that's my recommendation to the council.
Councilor Phillips.
I was there for this, and if I remember right, part of the reason I got talked into it at that, sprinkler system at the time was a relatively inexpensive way to do it and a good working choice.
Mm-hmm.
But after, as time has gone on, and Chris's letter raises a lot of questions, it seems that it's not as simple to get it inspected, and there's some issues doing it. Now, I assume that you've read the letter that we had in our packet from Mr. Durr.
Mm-hmm.
Are you telling me that none of his points are baseless, or are you telling
No.
me that he has some valid points
No,
there that
there may
make
be
it a
some valid
difficult
points there.
process?
Are there things that maybe we can work with within that ordinance? Like I said, NFPA 1142 gives us some latitude that way. And I understand that the market for inspecting some of these sprinkler systems could use some work, but that's something that can be done at the market level, not at the city level.
So can I ask a very direct, blunt question?
Yeah.
My understanding of the problem right now is that we have several developments underway that, and I'll be interested in hearing more of the actual details, but they're ready, they're being held up. That the individuals who are moving into those that own it, the developers, they can't move on the project because they can't get these inspected because of the market conditions, because there are no inspectors available to do that. So now we have a project that's been approved for sprinklers without the ability to get them inspected, which means the project is, it's done, it stops. Do you have the ability to provide the waiver and inspection to allow those projects to move forward or not?
The developer of those projects has the right and the ability to come back to the planning board and pick another one of those options.
So, no. If as the ordinance stands now, you can't do anything with the sprinkler issue. And I'm not trying to be contentious, I really need to understand it, so.
Well,
When you say there's negotiation.
Right.
Do you have room to negotiate with the sprinkler system
No,
in and of itself?
That's a 13D system that's regulated by the state fire marshal's
So,
office. So-
as long as we keep that in our ordinance, the projects are,
No,
they can move forward at great expense. They could come back, redo their plans, they could then put in a
Inspector from outside the area to
cistern,
come in to do
spend
the
tens of
inspection.
thousands of dollars.
I don't know if it's tens of thousands.
Well, we'll hear about it
Right.
in a minute. Council Caplan?
This ordinance troubled me on several levels. First, we're talking about, affordable housing, lowering the cost of housing for people, but we're putting in an ordinance that will greatly increase the cost of building. And then, does this apply to any specific lot size? Is it about a density measurement?
It has to do with residential subdivisions, where somebody is going into a project to subdivide land, to make money, selling these lots off.
And
Frankly, with no thought to fire protection
So
or
let's-
safety of my people.
let's say they do sell these lots off individually, and a homeowner wants to build on their own land. They have to do one of these things if it's not already
The developer has three options when they're developing the property. They can either put in fire hydrants, they can put in underground cisterns, or they can require whoever buys the house lots to put in sprinklers. They have a choice of what they choose as that water supply for fire protection. It's not a requirement that I'm requiring anyone to put sprinklers in their homes.
So let's say John Smith and Mary Smith buy a 5-acre lot in a subdivision that doesn't have option 1 or 2, and they are modest income, but they have to come up with a sprinkler system before they can get their house approved.
They would need to take that into consideration before buying the house lot.
And then, in addition to that, it's basically punishing the modest income in favor of large developers that can afford these large systems. And I don't see that as fair. And then you keep mentioning NFPA 1142. What does NFPA stand for?
National Fire Protection Association, that's an easy one.
And so, that's what I thought it stood
Yeah,
for.
yeah.
But I looked it up, and their board is basically made up of people who sell fire equipment, people who service fire equipment, people who sell sprinkler systems, and so they're creating a regulation that is actually self-serving, in my opinion. It's not that I'm saying that they're not looking out for firefighter safety, but it's also kind of a little self-serving when they make recommendations that are actually benefiting themselves, such as lifespan of fire trucks, for example, lifespan of fire equipment, but they're the ones that are selling this. And so I have a problem because there's a little bit of a conflict of interest in that whole thing.
These are the standards that we're given by to work with.
Council Lyons?
So, the same Mrs. Smith and Mr. Smith, they buy 3 acres up on 179, not attached to a subdivision. They can build a house without putting in any system at all.
Correct. Because they're not
So-
part of that subdivision that has these ordinances involved with it. I mean, but they still need to build the house to code. There's still, they have to use low-flow toilets, and they have to have all of these other different things that are in the ordinance or in the law.
So what really makes that house any different than the ones on the subdivision, other than they didn't put it on a subdivision?
It's the idea that these developers are developing neighborhoods in places where They're, no, hear me out, they're putting in roads, they're putting in power lines, they're developing these lots with frankly no thought to what's gonna happen if there's a fire. Yes, we can take some water with us, but there's a lot of places we have to travel a fair distance in order to find water. And at 2 o'clock in the morning on a snowy night, it's nice to know that you have a water supply in these, what I would call cluster developments.
So I'm gonna open the public hearing so we can hear from the public as well, and then we can continue the discussion. So I'm gonna open the public hearing. Public hearing is open. Anybody from the public would like to speak?
Good evening, Christopher Durr, local installer of the 13D Uponor fire suppression systems. I've had some dealings in the inspection problem, the installation problem in subdivisions, but also coming from the subdivision standpoint. I believe all of you have the email I sent out a while ago addressing a lot of those concerns, so I mean, I can go over it all, but can just answer specific questions to that email if there are any. I would like to make one point though on the what Gene, Councilor Lyons brought up about a 3-acre lot on 179. I had a 5.5 acre lot on Happy Town Road that I subdivided into 3 parcels, which then became a subdivision, which then required me to choose one of these 3 options. There is no city water service in that area. To do 3 lots in that area, to do, the underground storage tank would have needed at least 1. At the time, was about $20,000 for the tank, upfront costs. That's a lot of money for upfront costs, after also doing the subdivision costs, 2 planning board meetings, and the costs associated with that. So the only other option that I was left with was to do the fire sprinkler systems, which have definitely diminished the value of the lots. I've been able to sell 1, but there's always questions about the fire sprinkler systems. That part of Ellsworth on the Happy Town Road, there's a lot of manufactured homes, single wides, double wides. These systems, the way they're put in place and inspected and permitted, basically eliminates having a single wide or double wide home, possibly even modular, depending on which code you're looking at. So those lots with this ordinance cannot have a new single wide home, even though that's what the neighborhood is, because they would be built out of state. If you had somebody install them there, that creates inspection issues in Maine, because now you're dealing with the Maine Fire Marshal's Office, not Pennsylvania or whatever state they're coming out of. So that trailer arrives here in Maine. If the system's there, you now have to still go through a rough-in inspection, final inspection, and a flow test. In order to do that, if it was put in out of state, you'd have to try to coordinate and try to figure out the inspection issue of, okay, did it get inspected down there for the rough-in? How would that all work? A lot of complications for a trailer that's $50,000, $60,000, affordable housing. If it doesn't come from out of state with that system already installed, now you have to go into that home and try to install it. So you're taking the ceiling down. It's a lot of extra work. Like I said, I install these systems. I'm a licensed limited fire sprinkler contractor. I see the benefits of these systems. I'm not disputing that. They are for life safety, not for structure safety. They're designed to allow you time to get out. They activate on a per room basis. They're heat activated. So it's meant to buy you time to get out of the structure for the fire department to arrive. It's not designed to save the structure.
Councilor Gordon?
How much are these approved systems for?
You can't give a square footage estimate because it's all based on the layout of the home. Each individual room size, if a room's over a certain size, if a closet is over a certain size, it now has to be sprinklered. So a lot of variables go into that. Also the layout of the home. Is your water, your faucets, your toilets, everything on the perimeter? Do you have, fixtures, throughout the home to tie into? because these systems can be used as a multi-purpose system, but 9 times out of 10, it works out better as a standalone system because, like I said, you can go in and put it in and it's its own system. Just, it works better that way.
But roughly how much?
For
what
a
was the-
two-story home with a finished basement, so you're talking 3 floors sprinklered, today's cost, you could be upwards, at least $30,000.
30,000?
30,000.
Yes.
Yikes.
Which brings to the next issue of nobody to inspect them. We don't have actual inspectors. You have an RMS representative, responsible managing supervisor, is RMS, who is in Minnesota for these Uponor systems. The RMS representative is somebody that has the qualifications through the fire marshal's office, as I laid out in the email. And that is highly subjective. It's 5 continuous years installing these systems, which is currently being determined as a rolling 5-year basis. You cannot have any gaps in between, or you're disqualified, taken off the list, which is what happened with the inspector we did have in the area. So now everybody's in the southern part of the state, which I included a list of all the approved folks. They're all mostly small business owners who do their own work. They're not inspecting companies. They don't go out and do it. They have their own work in the southern part of the state. It adds significant travel costs to come up here, scheduling issues. And I believe that was raised back in 2017 when the city was in the same position with inspections. When Inspector Henge became certified, it was brought up, brought to attention that having to utilize these out-of-town Southern Maine RMS representatives, they're not looking to do it, and if they are, they're gonna make $1, and it adds, a couple of years ago it was $1,000. With fuel prices today, I'm sure it's gone up.
Can you confirm, oh, I'm sorry, Council
Well, no,
Phillips?
Yeah, because it's interesting you throw that number out here. At the time that we approved this and went through, I think the number being floated at the time was $3,000 to $5,000 per home. I remember that distinctly, as I was thinking the same issue as you're adding to the cost of the home and keep driving up the cost of the home and make building it more unaffordable. $30,000 additional cost on a house is pretty substantial.
Like I said, even a standard, 1-story with a finished basement, you're still, talking 20,000 or
20?
20.
Am I correct that there are existing developments now that have these installed?
As far as I know, there's one on Green Lake, the Neville Shores subdivision, and mine on the Happy Town Road. I believe all of their subdivisions that previously had the sprinkler option decided to go with the tanks, namely because they're owned by groundwork contractors who can put the tanks in much more affordably. And they're also putting infrastructure in. That was one of my big concerns with the ordinance, is it doesn't differentiate between minor and major subdivisions. My subdivision on the Happy Town Road was a minor subdivision. It wasn't a major subdivision.
But you've actually installed,
No.
you haven't installed it, you just selected this option?
Right.
Okay,
I mean,
so
like
it
I said,
it hasn't been
I couldn't afford to put that tank in the ground to sell lots for, a little over $12,000 a piece. It just made no financial sense, I had the land available. Like I said, it would have been an excellent affordable option for somebody, to live a little bit out of town, but, like I said, have an affordable lot. Lots in Ellsworth, I'm sure right now, are probably $40,000 a piece.
Councilor Capito?
And this goes right back to my original point of it's creating a barrier to entry for the modest income family versus the well-funded.
It effectively, like I said, it
Large
effectively
developer.
bans mobile homes in any of these because it's
And
too complicated.
Anytime you create a regulation, the initial cost might be $3,000 to $5,000, but as demand, because the regulations are becoming more popular from region to region, that drives up the cost as well. Not to mention the cost of lumber right now.
Raw materials too. I mean,
Yeah.
just the cost of the piping, the sprinkler heads. the shortage of skilled labor to install them.
Councilor Gordon.
You mentioned Neville's Way.
Mhm.
That's on Green Lake. So
Correct.
my question to, the lake doesn't count for water access, or?
So I went out with Chief Saunders today and we did a drive around. The accessibility currently to the lake is not there for us to utilize that as a water source. A right-of-way would have to be created or something that would get us down to the water source. And then we'd have to have the capability to pump back up to the roadways in order to do that. Our current apparatus don't have that capability to be able to get that close to the water and be on stable ground, to be able to pump water back, to be able to bring in outside fire departments to move water if we have a fire. We're talking a 2,000 square foot home, we're talking 2, 3, 4 tankers that are coming from outside communities because we can't do it ourselves. That's a lot of road traffic, that's trucks on the road, but that's mobile water that we're relying on somebody coming from out of town to bring us. So if it takes them 10, 15 minutes for us to get, we empty a truck of water in basically what we're running, probably about 6 minutes we'll empty a truck of water. And then we're waiting for water to come. So having access to the lake would be a great, and we discussed that today, that could be a viable option. And there are some solutions that we could look at down the road that would help us offset some of that. That's why we're looking at possibly going to a workshop so we can actually discuss these other options before making changes to an ordinance.
But the existing developments that are already there
Mhm.
prior to this, you have the same scenario.
I don't have all that information because I wasn't here prior, so I haven't been able to get all the way around all the rest of the communities in the area, being today's day one.
That's tomorrow.
Unfair.
However, I can't answer for the other communities right now without being able to go into those areas. Those that have sprinklers, I'm going to be 100% in supportive of sprinklers if we're able to have them installed in homes. Because like you said, it's a life safety issue and we want those people to come out. Okay? It's great for the firefighters. We can offset the system and it works great to help with property conservation. But at the end of the day, it's about life safety and it's about you getting out of your house in a timely manner. If those systems aren't in place, either for it to be started before the fire department gets there to help you get out of your house, then you're stuck in your house, or you're finding a way out. We have to get there to be able to affect getting in the building to help you. Those sprinklers are designed to help you get out of the house while we're trying to get set up and get to you. So there's a benefit to them. The cisterns brings water closer to your residence. It'd be like having your hydrant. We're asking for the cisterns to be put in place so that we have a water supply closer to those residents to be able to, while we're waiting for tankers to show up, we have additional water. 10,000 gallons of water goes a long way when we're fighting a fire. The average fire that I've responded to in my history, we can usually put out with 10,000 gallons of water. That's a significant savings for being able to provide property conservation at the same time, because we want you to have less damage to your house if possible. But again, if I go back to the workshop ideas, we'd like to be able to sit down and discuss these and review all the options and come up with other options in a reasonable time frame. Be able to present with you some other options for the ordinance.
But again, this is creating a barrier to entry for home ownership for modest income families. And one of the things that we've discussed ad nauseum in Ellsworth is affordable housing. And when we create a barrier like this, whether it's a homeowner who's renting or a first-time homeowner, it's cost prohibitive for them. And so now they're stuck continuing to rent in an apartment where they don't have equity, and it seems unfair.
I understand. I would like to be able to come up with options for that, to be able to manage through those problems. there's some equipment that we can look at in line when talking with that right of way down to the water and be able to have those put in place. We have been looking at some options that may help that situation out, which may eliminate cisterns or the residential sprinklers. But we need to be able to sit down and review those options before we can come to you with them. The immediate thing with the sprinklers is in relation to the situation with Uponor. I think they're two, while they're both related, I think us acting on an action related to the sprinklers, one is kind of different than the other. I can't fix the situation with the fire marshal's office. That's something we're going to look at down the road in order to create legislative action to try and make some changes that way, so that we can change the inspection process for the sprinklers. They've made it really strict on them in order to do so. But I think with looking at these other options to help make that affordable housing situation, we've looked at some different things as far as expanding the cistern distances in order to cut down on the amount of cost there's going to be to do so. At the end of the day, with affordable housing, how are we still going to protect them? That's my question back to you. How do we protect them? That's what I'm being charged with.
And how did we protect them 20 years ago? We educated them, smoke detectors in every home. Now we have carbon monoxide detectors in every home.
We've slowly added more and more safety into what we've done. Every generation, we've added a different level of safety to the process.
And while I understand that, those levels of safety as far as home fire drills, second floor escape ladders, smoke detectors in every home. These were affordable safety measures that were affordable even by low income standards. And so when you're talking about somebody who wants to buy a single wide and pop it on 3 acres,
right,
but that's going to cost them $30,000 when the cost of the single wide is $80,000, it's creating that barrier to entry for home ownership for that first time home buyer.
So I guess the question I have, is there an immediate need? I guess I misunderstood the issue of I thought there were homes that have been developed that were sprinkled that were just waiting for an inspection. I'm hearing you say that.
Yeah, there's one, that the groundwork started, and the second one groundwork's gonna be starting here within the next couple of weeks.
Okay, so do you, from your perspective?
It has to be, the rough-in has to be done before the sheet rock covers, the piping, so it's one of the first things to be done.
Is there time, from your perspective, to have a workshop, or do you need?
Because I have to submit, I pay for the plans from Uponor. They design the plans, they calculate everything out, put the sprinkler layouts. They then submit that to the state for a fire marshal's permit. On that permit has to be an inspector. Who is going to be doing these inspections? And as of right now, I don't have that person, so I can't even get the permit for the house that's currently under construction that I'm waiting to put that system in, let alone when I haven't even bothered to go ahead with these other two that are just groundwork. Like I said, the house is sitting there right now, the window is weather tight, but I can't put the system in without a permit. That's specifically stated by the fire marshal's office, that cannot be
I should have you
installed.
go up to the mic so that sorry, because the community's listening. Is the inspection, is that required because we have, as a city, tied it to the rules, or is it that's the way it needs to be? You cannot install these systems without it going through the inspection process?
Correct, because the city has the ordinance for these systems. Like I said, the most common, and really, I think the only one available here is that Uponor AquaSafe system. So, like I said, I send the plans out to Uponor in Minnesota. They design it. Like I said, they take the plans, they lay out the piping size, the sprinkler head size, all of that. That then goes to the Maine State Fire Marshal's office, who issues the permit. But you have to have that RMS representative who will do the inspections on that plan in order to get the permit. And so you can't install the system until you have that permit.
So that has nothing, even if we waive that requirement for an inspection, we can't waive it.
Right, that's a, like I said, that's an NFPA 13D, you know,
So that's
regulation.
So you're asking to not have to sprinkle the building? Is that your request?
Like I said, my recommendation from, you know, just experience from both ends of it with the sprinkler systems and with doing the subdivisions, minor subdivision, is in order to protect the most amount of people, this ordinance should be geared toward major subdivisions of a certain number of lot sizes. You know, a major subdivision is defined by that, you know, a certain number of lots. And to do those underground tanks, because those underground tanks, you know, like the fire department has said, is an asset to everybody. They can use that tank for any structure within that subdivision. This sprinkler system is only gonna do this home and, you know, whatever room it is in to get somebody out. And so, like I said, the small subdivisions, it's impossible for me to have done that, you know, let alone the upfront cost. Just, you know, that location, it's just not financially, just doesn't make sense to do that. You know, larger subdivision, you can spread the cost out over the lots, you know, better. Again, you're putting in new infrastructure. The subdivision I did on the Happy Town Road is on the Happy Town. There is no road, there's no infrastructure. They all have access to the main road. So-
I don't mean to cut you off, it's just
No,
in terms of,
yeah.
I'm just looking for more specific questions around, because I really want to understand what your needs are.
Like I said, we are at a standstill
Yeah,
right now.
that's what I'm-
And the pipeline is backing up as these lots sell. Like I said, there are now 2 homes that, you know, the groundwork has started on one, the groundwork will be starting on the other one here, you know, fairly soon. It does go back to, like I said, with, you know, the inspection issue, it's so difficult to become an RMS representative because of the fire marshal's rule. You know, that's a regulation, not a law. So, like I you know, put in the email is that 5 continuous years of experience is being interpreted as a rolling process. The other 2 certifications, I spoke with NICET about these certifications, you know, because I was going to get certified myself. But the inspection and testing of water-based systems certification only applies to, you know, bigger commercial systems that require annual maintenance, you know, specifically not, you know, startup, initial rough-in inspections. It's looking at that annual testing. The fire protection, water-based fire protection system layout is the design. That is what Uponor does in Minnesota. That's somebody that sits down and does the CAD work, pulls it up, does the calculations, and puts it on. However, the NICT doesn't recognize these Uponor systems as one of these. So even if I had the work experience designing those, that would not count towards the work experience needed, which is 2 years to get certified as a level 2 inspector
So
or
can I-
certification.
Can I just interrupt? I want to ask the council a question, just in terms of process. Not knowing, because I think that this is complicated beyond just the issue that you're bringing in terms of an ordinance change. And one of the unknowns that's going through my head is whatever action we were to take, my assumption is that you're going to be in a position of having to go back to the planning board. And the planning board is then going to have to go through this whole process again. And so what I'm wondering, it sounds like there potentially some options at a workshop. If we could expedite a workshop, I know it's another meeting, but if we could do that sooner than later, bring in members of the planning board, bring in the fire department, bring you back, and do that very soon to walk through this. Because my concern is that even if we were to take action, I mean, the only action it sounds like we could take is to change the ordinance dramatically, which is not going to happen. I don't see how we could do it tonight with the technicality in terms of then we're waiving all parts of it. I think you would be in a better position if we moved to a workshop and tried to work through this issue and come to some resolution collectively. Otherwise, I think you're going to get bogged down in further delays. That's just my impression. I welcome other feedback on that. Councilor Phillips.
Look at the heart of the issue here. You just look at the sprinkler system. It went from an affordable option to an expensive option. And now with the state fire marshal and an inspection, it's virtually a catch-22. We've got, so you added to the cost, you can't build a house without it, but you can't go ahead because you can't get it inspected. So it's treading water. You can't, and it seems from what the new chief said and whatever it is, it's a great life safety issue, but it's an impractical solution. You've turned it into an impractical solution with bureaucracy. We got this one saying yes, this one saying yes, no, I can't inspect it, so what do we do? We had a great idea that might save lives, we made it so darn difficult, no one can put it in. So if we leave that in there, we're not solving anything.
No, but if we take that part out, this is my point, is if we could take the sprinkler system out tonight, but it still means that the rest of the ordinance says that, okay, you've got 3 options. Now you have 2 options. You selected the third. We eliminate the third option.
Yep.
Now there are 2. You need to now go back to the planning board for option 1 or 2 for your development. That's my concern, is that we create, and based on what you're saying, is that's not affordable either for those smaller developments. So.
Right, like, so that should be geared towards a major
Right,
subdivision.
so that's why I'm saying it's more complex than just eliminating the sprinkler system.
It's now become an ordinance that has no good turns.
Right, and that's why if we can expedite a workshop, I'd be interested in hearing the ideas that the fire department has, because I think it's gonna result in a faster solution for you personally. That's just my personal opinion.
I will say, like I said, I'm licensed to do these. It's not just a city of Ellsworth, requirement that it can be put in anywhere. Of all the phone calls I've had from people, once they understand the cost of it, they decide against it. Even residents of Ellsworth that have land that are not in these subdivisions that they're required, once they understand the costs, and other issues related to that. I mean, it's not just the system itself. It's, if you're on a well, you need to have a certain flow out of your well, or now you've just introduced, a storage tank in the basement. So now you need to find space for that storage tank. You've introduced now a constant pressure well pump. So it's not just your simple pressure tank and well pump for, a few $100s, $1,000, whatever, that is now. These constant pressure pumps are, upwards probably $3,000. So there's a lot of associated things that go along with that. And like I said, the big thing too is if that well doesn't produce, now you're, getting into having your own personal water tank in the basement, which again, that's not included in any of these costs. That's a much more, expensive endeavor.
Councilor Grindle.
Is this ordinance statewide, or this is specific? Okay.
There are other communities out there, and I'll use Gorham as an example. If you remember my initial comments back in 2008, our initial proposal was any residential home in the city of Ellsworth shall be sprinkled. And the reason that was originally thought of was that with some of the building codes that were, well, they're still in action today, but when they came out with this lightweight construction building code, the caveat to that, because you're using lightweight construction, and when I say lightweight construction, I'm talking about chipboard that they use in floor stringers with just a simple, 2x3 cap on the top and bottom. They're lightweight, they're economical, they're low cost, they work great until there's a fire. And they go away, just like that, because they're just glued together. Roof trusses with the metal plates in them. When those are heated, those metal plates let go, and it's like a house of cards, okay? So the caveat to this lightweight construction back in 2008 was the International Building Code, IBC? Universal Building Code. That was the caveat that in exchange for using this lightweight construction, these homes would be sprinkled. Now, the state allowed the lightweight construction portion of that building code, but they didn't adopt the mandatory sprinkler systems, okay? Gorham, the city of Gorham in southern Maine, if you build any residential structure in Gorham, it will be sprinkled. So there are towns and communities in the state of Maine that require residential sprinkler systems.
Back to your initial, I think it's a quick workshop to discuss all of this. There really is a lot to it and doesn't really seem to be an answer.
Councilor Blanchett?
Chief, is there a somewhat of a middle ground if using these requirements, the sprinkler requirement, the underground tank, so on and so forth, if the building is not built using lightweight construction methods, could that requirement be rescinded in that case if it was, I'll say traditional?
Well, if it's in a subdivision, homeowner A might elect to go with that. Homeowner B might elect to go with lightweight building construction. So, I mean, where do you, if the developer's not putting in an underground cistern, which they're great, but they do nothing to put the fire out until we get there, and then we have to tie up manpower to pump water out of those tanks to put on the fire, manpower, frankly, that we don't have. If we tie up somebody on a tanker truck at a cistern, pumping to a lead engine, okay, there's 2 people that we've tied up. One person's in charge, now it only leaves us 1 firefighter. Whereas if we're showing up as a residential sprinkler system home, we bring an engine and a tanker, both of those units are on scene, we can have 2 people go in the building, and technically we still have 2 people outside, which is another NFPA standard. If you have 2 people going into a building, you should have 2 people outside ready to go.
Councilor Lyons?
Like these sprinkler systems that he's talking about aren't designed to save the house at all, so you still gotta pump all that water and use your manpower, I mean.
Well, these, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's always been my impression that these sprinkler systems are a life safety system, yes. However, they're designed to catch a fire in the incipient stage, and in a majority of the time, it will contain or extinguish the fire by the time we get there. Fair statement?
Well, like I said, they are more designed for life safety, but the other issue is when they're on a well, if the power goes out, you're only having water that's in that line. You're no longer pumping water into the home if the power goes out. You could probably speak to how often power goes out on a home that catches fire. It's probably, a good percentage of the time that there's power interruption.
All right, I'm just gonna close the public hearing, just officially. The public hearing is closed. Now, just so for council to decide what we want to do.
Well, I think a workshop is definitely in order in the short term, to work out some of these issues.
If it was me, I'd make a motion to repeal chapter 4 and then do away with it. I mean, it's just gonna run into the same problem. A month from now, it's still gonna be a problem, and they got houses that need to be built. If we repealed it, and then if they wanna work on something new,
But even repealing it's not gonna fix their issue, because their deed and their subdivision plans all have state this requirement, and they'd have to go back to the planning board. They can't move forward with their current subdivision and their plans, even if you repeal this ordinance.
During the planning board process, it was brought up that if it were ever to be repealed, that was a lot covenant that was on the subdivision map. So if that ordinance is repealed, that covenant would go away. That wouldn't require another planning board meeting or anything else. That just wipes it off, because that's how it's stated, is per that ordinance is what requires it. So if that ordinance doesn't exist anymore, that lot covenant doesn't exist, and it's a moot point.
So you're certainly free to make the motion. I'll tell you where I stand on it. I wouldn't support it on the grounds of, and I want to explain before, so you understand why I'm there with my mindset, is that if we repeal it completely, that means any development that comes in to the planning board from this point forward until there's some new resolution they're free to construct and do whatever they want, which may not be in the best interest of all parties. And I would prefer more information to understand the issue in terms of the options and to do it in a speed to address your issue, because it's time sensitive. But I'm just not comfortable treading into just eliminating an ordinance of that significance without more facts. That's, please.
You know, in order to do a subdivision, like I said, it's at least, you know, a two planning board meetings, so that's 2 months. You know, they don't, you know, just happen spur of the moment. A lot of engineering, surveying, everything that goes into it. And those homes are still required to be built to the building code. It's just this ordinance with the underground tanks or the fire sprinkler systems. They're still required to be built to, you know, that same building code. Another thing also is with the NFPA, it talks, in the ordinance, talks about 1 and 2 family dwellings and townhomes. Townhomes, apartment buildings, don't have to have a fire sprinkler system. They can have a fire separation wall. That's every 2 units. And then you have another, I think it's 5/8 sheetrock in between each unit, which eliminates that whole issue. So now you've just taken townhomes out of the ordinance by using building materials. So now you just have single-family homes, which again, you know, speaks to that affordability. You know, and so if the, you know, the town and city is looking to have everybody in apartments and not be homeowners, or, you know, also, like I said, it just stifles doing a subdivision when you have, I mean, a lot goes in. I had like a 3-lot subdivision on Happy Town Road, was 40-something pages long to do a minor subdivision. I mean, that's a lot, you know, to do. I did a lot on my own. I was able, you know, to save a little bit there. But if you're doing a larger subdivision, a lot of, I mean, just like we were talking earlier with the bike path, you know, and anything like that, a lot of, you know, engineering costs go into it before anything, you know, before a shovel even hits the ground.
No, I agree with everything you're saying. I think we need to make a change. I support that 100%.
You know, so I don't think that someone's gonna go and make.
But I
a
don't know how many,
subdivision
what I
just
don't know
in the
sitting here
meantime.
tonight, I don't know how many subdivisions are in their second meeting. I don't know how, if we waive this
I don't believe
and,
there's-
and there's something going forward, they immediately are no longer under those rules. I just don't have that information. So that's why I'm trying to find this middle ground to move this faster for you. But I'm not comfortable making that kind of a decision that could have a ripple effect that I'm not aware of. That's my only point. I want to help, I just don't think we're at the
Right.
point, so.
Like I said, we really are, like I said, stuck. I mean,
So I don't see
these
why we
houses are
can't repeal it and then
substantial.
still have a workshop to work on a better option overall.
But you can certainly,
I would really.
if you want to make a
I don't
motion.
wanna hold these guys up.
Make a
anymore.
motion.
It's unbelievable that we're holding them up this long.
Motion to
It's
repeal
ridiculous.
Chapter 4 of the fire prevention ordinances. Necessary inspectors are not available to keep construction projects going.
So there's a motion?
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion.
I personally don't have enough information. I understand where you're coming from. I would like to have a day or two to go through some more facts and to speak with community members and, before I make that decision. I'm not ready yet to do that, so that's,
Mr. Durr laid it out fairly well. There's still building codes you're going by. The house is still safe. For the last 50 years, they've been doing them without these sprinkler systems. And how many houses a year burn in Ellsworth?
Not many.
Not very many. I don't think that it's gonna be a catastrophic thing if we repeal it and then start working on something different, if that's what the community wants to do.
Can I just add, please be cautious, because I can tell you, we currently have in front of the planning board a subdivision on Denver Way, which consists of 14 two-apartment buildings
Okay.
that are within 5 feet of each other. And if we repeal this, they will not be required to install the 20,000-gallon cistern that they've already, is in their plan and they're planning to install. And you are going to be putting, that is just one subdivision that you're going to be putting in a position where those homes and those people are gonna be in peril, because you're talking about 14 buildings within like how many acres? 6 acres.
And-
Buildings are within 5 feet of each other. If one of those catches fire, and we have no water to fight that fire, accessible water, you're gonna lose 14 homes and displace 28 families. So we're talking about affordable housing, we're talking about life safety, and I sympathize with Mr. Durr, but I think by repealing this tonight without more information, I think we're putting people in peril, and I think we're,
Yeah, and I would say that the short term, let's put a time frame on it. I'm not talking short term, let's find a date in August. I'm talking next 7 to 10 days. Let's have a workshop. Let's get some information and see if we can move this along. I don't think 7 or 10 days is going to make a difference in terms of this issue, but I'm personally not willing to take the risk that we have unintended consequences. I want to help too, but I want to do it responsibly, and I don't think we have enough information. That's just, so I say we get something on the books, 7 days, and we deal with this.
But the townhomes or the two apartments aren't required to do that.
No, that subdivision is.
they are.
That subdivision is required to do that.
The original plan for that subdivision that Chief Mosier, City Manager Mosier is talking about, the original plan for that was gonna be 7 buildings with 4 apartments in each building, which would either require a fully sprinkled building with a fire alarm system, which was going to be expensive, but not as expensive as option 2, which was a engineered high-challenge firewall, which basically is a double 5/8 sheetrock on each side of this wall. It goes basement to the roof line with no penetrations whatsoever, no piping going through, nothing. Essentially cutting that building in half. So what they elected to do instead, because that was also a very expensive option, probably more expensive than the sprinklers, what they decided to do, which was allowed, was to, instead of having 4 units in that building, they split the building into 2 buildings, and now it's 1 and 2 family dwellings that didn't necessarily require a sprinkler system or a high challenge firewall. But the code allows them to be placed 5 feet apart, which is very, very, very close. So the option that they elected to go with on this particular subdivision was to go with a 10,000-gallon cistern at the beginning of the project to allow us to get some sort of water on the fire while our tanker shuttles from other communities, sometimes 15 or 20 minutes away, have time to get there to help provide water to put the fire out.
And this is on Denver Way?
This is on Denver Way. It's called Denver Trail, I believe it is what the subdivision's name is. It's on the Bangor Road, just before Route 1A Relics on the right.
Council Blanchett?
Right now, there's like 9 apartments out next to the road. This project is gonna go in behind. It's a 6-acre project. It's gonna have 7 wells and 4 septic systems, and it's a huge project.
So this
So by eliminating this ordinance, I sympathize with Mr. Durr.
But this also proves his point, that only the larger developer can afford to do this, and it's going to benefit the larger developers at the cost of the little guy.
Council Blanchett?
I also have sympathy on both sides of this, but I also realize I don't have anywhere near enough information on this, and I too would be in favor rather than eliminating anything tonight. I would rather do a workshop. 7 to 10 days, I don't see is going to change anything. Mr. Deere, there you are. You've owned this property for some time now. I mean, this is not an issue that's come up this week. So,
The property I'm unhappy down the road, I've had it for sale for a couple of years now, and it's been a hard sell. It's always been brought up when it has sold, but also just to make a point though, is the planning board does have authority to require certain things. So if the planning board were to see this project coming forward and there was an ordinance, they could still say as approval for this subdivision, we want you to put in a fire tank, whatever, but also the apartment building that's in front of this proposed new subdivision is a 9-unit building that's not sprinklered. It has fire separation.
So I'm gonna stop.
In closing, given the lateness that the hour is getting to, I would be in favor of the workshop. I know there's a motion on the...
That's why I wanted to just bring it back. We do have a motion, we have a second. We're in discussion now. Is there any further discussion? All right, all in favor of the motion?
This is a motion to...
This is a motion to repeal the
Okay.
ordinance. All in favor of repealing the ordinance? All opposed? Motion fails.
With the understanding we will do a workshop.
Well, that's what my next step is, that I would like to request that we schedule a workshop immediately.
That's,
Yeah.
that's a nice idea, but that also needs for the fire and to get together, and they know there's an issue. They need to put some stuff together so we know what we're gonna get ourselves into that makes it viable for somebody trying to do this instead of putting anyone in the catch-22 situation.
Well, I think that, yeah, absolutely, and what we're looking for the workshop is that if, there's a big concern, and I hear the consensus that we need to resolve this, and if we don't find some middle ground that preserves the ordinance for these larger developments, which I think we're all in favor of, then we're gonna end up without an ordinance for any of it. So that's what we want to accomplish at that workshop, is a good solution for this situation. So if we could get something scheduled, can you work
I will do
on?
it tomorrow.
Thank you. All right. Item 22, oh, no, yeah. Item,
I have just one question. So in the meantime, the construction still stays stopped, even though it's been stopped for considerable...
in the meantime, they're operating under existing ordinances, so whatever they're doing or not doing, nothing changes. We haven't taken any action that would change that.
Are you voting to table and hold a workshop, or do you?
No, well, we just voted, there was a motion made to repeal the ordinance. That was voted down. What we have agreed on, though, is to have a workshop on this matter within the next 7 to 10 days.
Do we have to make a motion for that?
Or, I mean,
It's just separate from the motion that was made on that issue was,
right, and you're gonna have a workshop, but what are you gonna do with this item, table it for future?
we will, out of that workshop will come a different agenda item. This issue's been resolved. Out of the workshop will come some other agenda item that we'll be taking action on.
Mr. Chairman, I have to leave.
Okay. You want me to catch up on that?
Thank you.
Item 22, Council Order Number 062109, action on approving the annual report for tax year April 1st, 2020 through March 31st, 2021, affordable housing tax increment financing districts.
Yeah, so you have the reports, and I just need your review and approval of them. All it is just a report of the 3 TIF districts that we have in the city, Oriole Way, Leonard Lake, and Oriole Senior, and it's just a description of those individual TIF projects, and then it just is a couple of questions about changes to those, and there are no changes. They are as they were intended to be.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the annual reports of the tax year, April 1, 2020 through March 31st, 2021 for the affordable housing tax increment financing districts, Leonard Lake, Oriole Way Senior, in the city of Ellsworth.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. And item 23, executive session to discuss labor negotiations between the City of Ellsworth and the Massachusetts and Northern New England Laborers District Council on behalf of Local 327 Ellsworth Wastewater Treatment Plant Unit in accordance with MRSA Title I, Chapter 13, Section 405, Paragraph 6D.
Serious?
And there'll be no report out.
I think they got canned.
Is there a motion?
Yeah, so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks,
All in
Jim.
favor? Motion approved. And I will get you the time that we adjourned.